Okay, let us set the level. We will access the logger object, obviously, dot, and let us find set level, right? This is from tab 9, this is from IntelliJ. Set level. And here we set the level. So let us choose this one. If I want to filter these levels out and focus on info and above, this will be the level I set the logging at. Setting the level, or rather the level passed into passed to this method as an argument is inclusive. So if I set it like so, level.info, anything from here to here will be passed. So info is also included in the threshold. Anything below the threshold is ignored. Let us test it. Only output designated as info and above are displayed. The rest are excluded. Logger dot. Let us display 3 warning. Oh, because this is supposed to have uppercase like so. And let us utilize the Zahi way all the way. Here will be info, and here will be config. Now remember, config should not appear as an output. Config output is not set for display. That will be our warning message. Info level has been set as threshold. And we can say here level setting has been completed. Now let us execute this and see which output will be displayed and which will be withheld. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As you can see, warning appears, info appears, but config does not appear. If I change this to config, that is interesting. Run again. It should appear. Could be that it is cached. Okay, hold on. I will restart IntelliJ and I will return. Okay, I have returned. I thought perhaps it was cached. That is why it was not detecting this, but for some reason it is not detecting this. I will have to research that and see why it is not displaying this method when it should, because these levels are inclusive. The threshold is included in the threshold. So if I set this to config, config should appear alongside warning and info, but for some reason it is not being displayed. So I will have to research that and see why that is. I wonder if I made a mistake somewhere. Possibly I could have made a mistake. If you know the answer before I discover it, please mention it in the comments so that we can all learn and benefit. So I will remove this from compilation and then continue. The guest does not wish to leave me alone. But you understand the principle that setting the log level prevents or filters the output depending on the scope of the project. As I mentioned, you will most likely encounter these three and only these three. Perhaps config albeit rarely, and I have never seen these at a professional setting before. Now we move on to off and all. If you wish to ignore the threshold and allow for everything to pass, we can say here particular threshold, and I will copy that, paste it here, every output instead, logger dot set level dot all. This allows for everything to appear in the output, whether it is important or unimportant. So I will actually, let me check this quickly and see why it does not detect the new change. Which message level below this message levels lower than this value will be discarded. The value level off can be used to turn off logging. If the new level is null, it means that this node should inherit its level from its nearest ancestor with a specific non-null level value. The new value for the log level may be null. I wonder if that is the issue. I was passing a null level. I do not believe so. And as I said, I will research it and add it as an addendum later on, bi'idhnillah, and God willing. Now, I will remove these from compilation, and to test this, I will add a finest and a severe. So here we can pass all logging levels are passed here as finest. What message can I pass as finest? All logging levels are permitted. Then execute this. For goodness sake, why is it not working? Oh man, I honestly do not know why. Okay, I wonder if it is an issue with IntelliJ itself. Let me see. It may be an issue with IntelliJ itself. Hold on, I will research it quickly and I will be right back. Okay, I researched it and realized it is not an issue with IntelliJ itself, but with the console handler. So, before we move on to this portion, let us skip it for now and return here. What is the issue? As I mentioned, this console output by default passes its output to the console handler. However, the default set level of the console handler is set to info, and the console handler overrides what you have set here. That is why nothing appears beyond info. To forcefully change the threshold level in the console handler, we have to instantiate an object of the console handler, then pass that to the logger. Basically, we will capture the default console handler, override its threshold logging level, then return it to the logger. So now, as info, yep, okay. So here what we can do is console, and the instantiation process is the traditional approach. console handler console is equal to new console handler, and that is it. Then we set the level. As you can see, it has the same set level. Level dot config. Then we return it to the logger by adding it add handler, which I named console here. So now this threshold has been overridden within the console. So now if I wish to pass in a config message, hopefully it will work now, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. Console handler threshold logging level has been set to config. Now let us test this and see. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Oh man, this is incredibly annoying. Okay, maybe this is the issue. Hold on. No, it is still the issue. Hold on, I will check this and I will okay, I discovered my mistake. The reason is this is not being overridden by this. So we have to remove this, then have the logger set the level. So what we can do, instead of having this level.config, well, we will leave it at that until we cover all. Then set level level.config. This should appear now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And there we have it. So remember, if you are logging levels below info, and this is why info is default, because as I mentioned, you will rarely encounter this, and you will not encounter this at the professional workplace. You will always encounter these three. So firstly, override the default level of the console handler, return it to the logger by adding it again. The mouse has issues. Then set the threshold level of the logger to match the one you set for the console, and it should work bi'idhnillah and God willing. Console handler object instantiation here with one S. Overwriting default console handler level, which is level.info. That is the default level. Adding console handler to logger for new configuration to take place. Setting logging threshold for new configuration to manifest. So that would be those would be the steps you need to undertake. Instantiate an object of the console handler, set its level below info, unless you wish to become astringent and focus on severe and warning. That is a different story. Then you will set this to warning or severe. Return it to the logger by adding it to the logger. Then set the threshold level of the logger itself. So you must set the level of the console handler and the level of the logger for the changes to manifest. But this is a bit annoying if you have to match the levels of the console handler. This is what level.all is useful for. I will remove these from compilation. What if you wish for a degree of flexibility for the logger level and only the logger level? We can have the console handler set its level to everything, and then through the logger you can choose your threshold as necessary. So how do I set the logging output to everything? Quite simply, we will console handler console is equal to new console handler console.set level dot all then logger dot add handler, that would be the console, then logger dot set level, let us set it to fine, simply to test it and see if it would work. Level dot fine. Now to test it even further, let us see if finer will appear. It should not, because the threshold of the logger itself is set to fine. The console merely tells the logger that everything is available to you. Choose whichever threshold you want. That is basically what this line indicates. All logging levels are available to logger. So let us test it with finer, which should not appear, and config, which should appear, because remember, the threshold is included in the range as well, and the range is always from bottom to top. That is the hierarchical direction. Logger dot finer console level set to all, logger dot config we can changed threshold level changed, because these are merely informative. Console level set to level dot fine. So this should not appear, and this should appear because of this. And as you can see, as we have what is the word? Predicted. Yes, that is the word. So remember, the console level determines which levels are available to the logger. Then the logger can set the threshold based on what is available to it from the console handler. Which is why it is essential to set the threshold for the console handler firstly, before you set the threshold level of the logger. This controls availability. This controls what will actually be displayed. Lastly, we have the opposite. Here we are displaying every single output. We can also set this to all, just to test it and see that both of these will appear. There we have it. What if we wish to disable the logger for whatever reason? We have the opposite of all, which we have seen. Here we will say no output. We will remove these from compilation. Instead of all, we will set it to off, but we can set this to all and here set it to off. No logging will take place. Nothing should appear because of this now. We have set it to off. Basically, we have turned off the logger. So this should not appear. This should not appear. None of these will appear. Even if you shout it out loud. Let us test it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And as you can see, the output is empty like so. That is logging for the console. Let us log to a file now. The beauty about logging is that this logger can accept multiple handlers. So we can add another handler to the same logger. We do not have to create a new logger. Normally, you will only see one logger object in projects. You will never see multiple logger objects. At least from my experience, I have never seen multiple logger objects. The levels obviously apply as well, the thresholds. So we will not tackle these. But let us see how we can actually create a log file. What did I call it here? Logging console output.